Hi, I have a book for you today called My Name is Blessing. Mutini watched his grandmother stirring the big pot. He knew there wouldn't be much to eat, but whatever there was would be shared equally among her 9 grandchildren. They lined up, oldest to youngest. Mutini was last. His grandmother, his Niana, placed a small spoonful on his plate. Using the 2 fingers of his right hand, he scooped up some porridge. It was warm and salty and tasted good as it slipped into his empty stomach. There was only one thing that would have made it better. He wished that his Niana had saved some for herself. Most often, she only ate the burnt parts from the bottom of the pan. The cousins ate quietly. In truth, they were more like brothers and sisters than cousins. Over time, they had come to live with their Niana when their own parents had died or left. There was never enough money or food, but Mutini knew his Niana did her best. She always gave what she had, extra portions of love. His Niana's name was Mumu, grace, something she always showed through quiet and calm acceptance of what fate had given her. In Kenya, names often mean something. There was his cousin, Kioko, the name given to a child born in the early morning, and Mweni, born when there were visitors. Utana meant happy, and Mwende, loved. Mutini's name was hard for him to bear. It meant suffering. That was what his mother had called him before she left. All because he was born with no fingers on his left hand and only 2 on his right. His Niana never even seemed to notice the missing fingers. It was one of the reasons he loved her so much. Still, Mutini heard the things that were said. Most were spoken quietly, but not always. There were taunts from children and cruel comments from adults. He tried not to let it hurt, but still it did. Niana, why do I have fewer fingers? She glanced up from her work, and a thoughtful look came over her face. We are each given more of some things and less of others. I've never met a person with fewer fingers than me. Come, she said. So Muthini moved to her side, and unexpectedly she placed her head against his chest. Yes, it is as I thought. I can hear that your heart is larger than other people's. It is? Yes, much larger. That is why you can run so fast. She stood up and placed her hands on his head. Slowly she nodded. I was right. Your head and the brains within are bigger than most. That is why you are able to think so clearly. He could think clearly? He was one of the top students in the entire school. And I know you have a greater spirit. I can sense it. She paused. It is so sad that other children only have 10 fingers when you have a larger heart, a bigger brain, and a greater spirit. His smile grew from the inside. Even if they tease you about having fewer fingers, don't tease them back about what you have that they do not. Please use your spirit and your head and your heart. Can you promise me? I promise, he said, and wrapped his arms around her. The next day, Muthini played soccer with his classmates. The ball never left his foot as Muthini raced up the field, dodging those who tried to take it away. He gave a mighty kick, and everyone watched him as the ball soared toward the center of the net. Just missed. He'd shot wide. Nobody scores all the time, his cousin Kyoko said. Maybe the next time. Not maybe, the next time he would score. As Muthini trotted back up the field, he saw his Niana standing at the schoolyard fence. Why was she here, so far from home? He walked toward her, feeling anxious. You are such a good player, Muthini, she said. I don't score. Well, you can't always have that happen, what you want to have happen. He noticed the sadness in her eye. Muthini, it is a long walk to the school for someone as old as I am. Niana, you are not that old. She reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. I am too old to do what I want to do, so now I must do what I have to do. She let out a deep sigh. You and I must go on an even longer walk. I only hope you can forgive me. A single tear rolled down his Niana's cheek as she told him her plan. He reached up and with his 2 fingers brushed the tear away. This wasn't what she wanted, and it wasn't what he wanted. There were so many grandchildren to provide for, and she had so little. And Muthini, the youngest, needed the most. He was too young and she was too old. He felt in his larger heart, understood in his bigger brain, that this is what needed to be done, and there was no choice. They walked along, hand in hand. Muthini's other hand was in the pocket of his tattered shorts. It was a habit he'd gotten into. He wanted people to see him before they saw his hands. Muthini was working hard to keep his tears inside so he wouldn't upset his grandmother. The walk had been long, and even his young legs felt weary as they trudged along the dusty road. They stopped at the gates of a little building, and there was no sign. Was this the right place? Muthini wondered. Then he heard the sound of children laughing and playing. Niana pushed open the gate and they looked inside. The children were well dressed and they all had shoes. Muthini looked down at his bare feet. His clothing was worn and ragged, and he felt nervous. A man came toward them. He was smiling. "Hello, my name is Gabriel, and this is my home." He gestured around the yard. "Our home." Muthini looked up at the man. He could see kindness in his eyes. "You have a very fine home," Niana said. "I have come to talk to you about my grandson, Muthini." Gabriel looked confused. Why would a child be called Suffering? It was the name given to him before he was left with me. Muthini could see Niana's tears were close. "I am so old and we have so little. I have come to ask if there's a place for Muthini in your home." Gabriel gave her a sad smile. "I know how hard this must be for you." He reached out a hand to the boy. "I am happy to meet you, Muthini." Muthini pulled one hand from his pocket and they shook. Gabriel lifted his hand. Slowly he turned it, looking at where the fingers should have been. "Let me see your other hand." Muthini held it out. He felt scared and embarrassed as Gabriel examined it. Gabriel shook his head. "I am sorry, but there is no room for Muthini in my home." Muthini was disappointed but not surprised. How could he expect there to be a spot for him when there are already so many children? "Should I bring him back in a week or two, or in a month?" she asked. "There will not be room in a week or two, or ever. There will never be room for Muthini in my home," Gabriel said. Muthini's heart dropped. Was it because of his fingers? "But there is always room for a blessing," Gabriel said. "He would be welcome in our home, not as Muthini, not as Suffering, but as Baraka, as a blessing." "You want me to change my name?" Muthini asked. "I want you to change your future," Gabriel replied. "I can never look at you and see suffering. I don't want others to see it either. I want them to hear your name and see what I see, what your Niana sees, a blessing, Baraka." His grandmother smiled. "That is all I have ever seen." The man held out his hand again. "Hello, my name is Gabriel." Muthini hesitated, unsure of what to do or say. Then he knew. He held out the hand with just 2 fingers and took Gabriel's outstretched hand. "Hello, Gabriel. My name is Baraka, and I am a blessing." Just so you know, Baraka is a real person. That is a picture of Baraka. And so is Grace, his grandmother, or Niana, and that's a picture of Grace. They live in the Mbani region of Kenya, a country in East Africa. Their home is outside the town of Kigoma, which is about 150 kilometers or 90 miles southeast of the capital city of Nairobi. Thank you for listening to the book Blessing. My name is Blessing.